So the thing about the letter is that it arrives on a Friday. And look, something about bad news arriving on a Friday it hits differently. Because you've got a whole weekend before you can do anything about it. You're just gonna sit there with this thing for 48 hours. Thinking about it. Rereading it. Getting increasingly annoyed at the specific font choices your landlord's property management company uses for formal correspondence. The letter is the deposit deduction notice. Your tenancy ended 11 days ago. You were, by every measurable standard, a good tenant. 18 months. Not a single late payment. No noise complaints, no disputes, no incidents, nothing. You left the flat cleaner than you found it, which you can prove, which turns out to be the key sentence in this entire story. The deposit was $3,000. The deduction notice says you're getting back $400. You do the math twice because surely that can't be right. It is right. They're keeping $2,800. The itemized list is 6 items long. Carpet damage. Wall scuffs multiple areas. Marks on the kitchen cabinet doors. Broken towel rail in the bathroom. Damage to the window blind in the second bedroom. Scuffing on the hardwood in the hallway. You read the list. And then something shifts in your chest, not anger yet, more like recognition, because you've seen every single item on this list before. On your move-in day. The camera. In 9 minutes and 43 seconds of phone footage that you took because a friend told you to, and that has been sitting in a phone backup ever since. They thought you had nothing. They were wrong about that. So wrong. Let's go back to move-in day. Honestly, when you first saw the flat, you loved it. And it wasn't perfect. You knew it wasn't perfect. It was a second-floor flat in a converted terrace, hardwood floors that creaked in the specific way that feels charming until you live with it, a bathroom that was functional but hadn't been updated since probably 2008, a kitchen with cabinet doors that didn't quite line up. But the light was good. The neighborhood was exactly where you wanted to be. The price was in range. And after 3 viewings and 2 rejected applications at other places, you were genuinely relieved when the offer came through. Move-in day is a Saturday in April. You've got a van. You've got a friend helping, Kieran, who has done 3 moves in the last 2 years and has opinions about every step of the process. Strong opinions. Kieran's second strong opinion, after always wrap your plates individually, is this one. Film the whole place before you bring a single box in. Every room. Every corner. Narrate what you're seeing. Get close-ups on anything that's not perfect. Because landlords, in Kieran's experience, and Kieran has some, will try to pin pre-existing issues on you unless you have dated proof that they were already there. You think, yeah, okay. Sensible. It takes 9 minutes and 43 seconds. You narrate as you go. Entry hallway, April 14th, scuffing on the left skirting board about here. Narrator voice, almost comedic, because it feels slightly paranoid while you're doing it. You film the bathroom's towel rail, which already has a slight lean. You film the kitchen cabinet doors that don't quite sit flush. You film the window blind in the second bedroom that's got a bent slat near the bottom. You film the carpet in the living room with its faded patch near the door. You narrate the whole thing. Date. Room. Issue. Close-up. Then Kieran backs up the van to the door and you get on with moving in. You keep that video for 18 months because the backup does it automatically. You don't think about it again until a Friday afternoon in October when a letter arrives and you sit on your couch and read the itemized list and think, wait. Here's the thing you once said clearly, right up front, you were a good tenant. Not in a subjective, well, I thought I was fine kind of way. In a documented, provable rent on the first of every month kind of way. You've got 18 months of bank transfer receipts showing payment on or before the first of each month. 18 months. 0 late payments. You had 1 maintenance request, a leaking tap in October of year 1, that you reported properly through the portal and that the plumber who came said was a pre-existing issue with the fitting. You got that plumber's assessment in writing, which felt paranoid at the time and now feels prescient. You also kept the place clean. Not compulsively, you weren't staging it for photographs every week. But you vacuumed, you cleaned the kitchen properly, you didn't let stuff pile up. The place was in better practical condition when you left than when you arrived. Because you'd renovated it, because you'd just taken care of it. Your landlord's name is Sandra Whitfield. She owns 4 properties in the area through a company called Whitfield Lettings, and she manages them through a property management company called Crestview Property. You never meet Sandra directly, all your dealings are through Crestview and specifically through a letting agent named Gary who is, without being cruel about it, a man who gives the impression he would rather be literally anywhere else than in his current job. Gary communicates in 3 modes: passive, passive-aggressive, and unreachable. You have a thick email trail with Gary that will also turn out to be relevant. The tenancy ends because you're moving cities for work. Not drama, not dispute, just a life change. You give the correct notice period, you coordinate the move-out inspection with Gary's office, you do the professional end of tenancy cleaned. You pay for it yourself out of pocket because you'd rather have the receipt than the question. The cleaners provide a certificate. You leave the keys with Gary's receptionist on a Tuesday morning. You feel fine about it. You feel like you've done everything right. 11 days later, the letter arrives on a Friday. And you feel a lot of things. Fine is not one of them. Okay, so let me just take you through the deduction list because each item on it is its own specific story. Because each item on it is something that's in the move-in video. And the fact that it's in the video means someone, either Sandra or Gary or whoever compiled this list, either didn't know about the video or assumed you'd lost it or just genuinely didn't care. Item 1, carpet replacement, living room, $6,200. The carpet in the living room had a faded patch near the door when you moved in. You filmed it, dude. Close up. Narrated, faded patch, living room carpet near door. Timestamp April 14th, 10:22 a.m. Item 2, repainting, multiple areas of wall scuffing, $480. There were scuffs on the walls when you arrived. The hallway wall had scuffs at door handle height that are so obviously pre-existing they're practically architectural. Filmed, narrated, timestamp. Item 3, kitchen cabinet doors, surface damage, $340. The cabinet doors didn't sit flush. They had surface marks around the handles. This is in the video. The camera lingers on it for about 8 seconds while you say cabinet doors kind of bashed up already, just noting this. Item 4, bathroom towel rail, structural damage, $20-80. Kieran had specifically said film the towel rail because it was leaning. Bought broken, just not straight. You filmed it. You even went back to film it again from a different angle. Towel rail, already leaning, can see it from here. 9 seconds of screen time in the video. Item 5, bedroom 2 window blind, damaged slat, $130. Bent slat near the bottom. Pre-existing. In the video. Timestamp. Item 6, hardwood floor, hallway, scuffing and surface damage, $950. This is the biggest number on the list. Almost $1,000 for floor scuffing. The hallway floor had scuffs on it when you arrived, you filmed them. But this number also seems like a lot for scuffing that even if some of it had occurred during your tenancy, couldn't reasonably amount to nearly $1,000 of hardwood repair. 6 items. Every single one documented at move-in. Every single one in a video file that's sitting in your phone backup, timestamp April 14th, taken before you brought in a single box. You spend the weekend absolutely furious, not in I'm going to do something rash way, in a very specific, focused, almost calm kind of fury that's entirely directed at gathering every piece of paper you own about this tenancy. By Sunday evening, you've got a folder, physical and digital, that contains the lease agreement, 18 months of payment receipts, the maintenance request, and the plumber's written assessment, the end of tenancy cleaning certificate, every email with Gary's office, and the 9-minute 43-second video. You label the folder Whitfield Dispute. You email Crestview on Monday to formally dispute the deductions. You give them 7 days to respond before you escalate. Gary emails back on day 4. He says the deductions are consistent with the checkout report and represent legitimate costs of returning the property to its pre-tenancy condition. That phrase, pre-tenancy condition, you read it twice. You screenshot it, and you add it to the folder. Here's what you figure out over the process of building your case, and some of this comes from tenant advocacy research you do, some from a brief conversation with a housing advice service, some from a Reddit thread that turns out to be genuinely the most practically useful thing you read in 6 weeks. What happened to you isn't unusual. It isn't even rare. Sandra Whitfield's operation is a version of something that happens a lot in the private rental market, and it works because most tenants don't have documentation. Most tenants don't film the move-in. Most tenants don't keep their receipts. Most tenants don't push back on deduction notices because they don't know the process, they don't have time, they assume the landlord has more leverage, or they just want it to be over. The whole model relies on the tenant taking the path of least resistance. Sandra has 4 properties. If she keeps even 2 deposits per year at the level she's attempting with yours, 2 or 3 tenants who don't push back, that's $5,000, $6,000 of essentially pure profit on top of rental income. Not from any actual damage. From the assumption that tenants won't fight it. And Gary is the mechanism. Gary issues the deduction notices. Gary signs the correspondence. Gary is the face of the process, which means if anything goes wrong legally, Gary is also a layer of buffer between you and Sandra. Gary probably doesn't love this part of the job. Gary probably tells himself it's just the checkout report, it's just following instructions, it's just processing. Which doesn't make it better, but it does explain why his emails read the way they read. The passive, liability careful language of a man who knows on some level that the thing he's doing is wrong but has decided that's someone else's problem. The second villain here, the systemic one, is the assumption that works in landlords' favor every time. That tenants are temporary and landlords are permanent, so the power naturally flows upward. That the deposit is really the landlord's money until the tenant proves otherwise. That small claims court sounds like a lot of effort, and the $2,800 is really just the cost of moving on. You decide that's not your assumption. You file. Okay, so small claims court. Let me tell you what this actually involves, because I think a lot of people have a vague idea of it as either way more dramatic than it is, or way more complicated than it is, or way more complicated than it is. The reality is somewhere in between. First, you file the claim online. The online system is genuinely not that complicated. You describe the dispute, the amount, the parties, the key facts. You pay the filing fee, which in your jurisdiction is $85 for a claim under $5,000. You attach your key documents electronically. The whole thing takes about 45 minutes. You file on a Tuesday evening after dinner. The defendant, Sandra Whitfield's company, technically has a window to respond. They do respond. Their response, which comes through a solicitor's letter, says essentially, the deductions are itemized and reasonable. The property sustained damage during the tenancy. The tenant is disputing legitimate charges. And specific. Counter evidence. Just a formal version of Gary's email. The hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks out. 6 weeks of you just knowing it's coming. Going to work. Doing the regular stuff. Occasionally opening your folder and making sure everything's in order. It's an interesting kind of patience to develop. AP position 3232, you had the evidence, you had the hearing. Date, you had 6 weeks to prepare. Value insert, your preparation for the hearing is methodical, not dramatic, just thorough. You organize the evidence into a physical bundle, printed, paginated with a clear index, because you've read enough small claims guidance to know that a judge who can find things easily is a judge who is less annoyed by your case. The bundle contains the lease, the payment history, the move-in video converted to a playable format, and the timestamps of each specific item on the deduction list, the plumber's written assessment. From the maintenance call, the end of tenancy cleaning certificate, the full email chain with Gary's office, and a one-page summary of each disputed item with the corresponding video timestamp and the claimed cost. You've also, and this takes some extra effort, pulled together comparable costs for the items Sandra is claiming. Carpet replacement for a living room that size. What does that actually cost? You get 3 quotes from local flooring companies. The range is $380 to $520. Sandra is claiming $620 for a carpet that you documented existed before you moved in. You put the 3 quotes in the bundle. You've also looked up the Whitfield Lettings company name in the tenancy deposit scheme registry, because legally in your jurisdiction, security deposits have to be held in a registered scheme and the landlord's compliance with that scheme has a bearing on dispute resolution. The deposit was registered but 3 days late, which isn't devastating, but is the kind of thing a judge might find relevant when assessing whether this landlord is operating carefully and in good faith. You put that in the bundle. The bundle is 24 pages. Plus the video, which you've loaded on your phone and on a tablet as backup. You bring both devices fully charged. Hearing day is a Thursday at 11:00 a.m. The small claims court is in a municipal building downtown and the hearing room is smaller than you expect. 6 chairs, a table, a raised bench area for the judge. Completely ordinary. Nothing like a TV courtroom. Just a beige room with a notice board and slightly uncomfortable chairs. Sandra doesn't appear, which you find out later she's legally allowed to do for small claims up to a certain threshold. She's represented by her solicitor, a pleasant-seeming man named Clive who is wearing a suit that costs more than your deposit and who gives the impression when he shakes your hand that he does this constantly and finds it mildly tiresome. You are representing yourself, which Clive definitely clocks, in which you catch a look of something, not quite contempt, more like assumption, in his expression before he arranges himself at the other side of the table. The judge is a woman named Judge Morrison. She's around 60, reads everything thoroughly, and has an expression that gives exactly nothing away. She introduces the proceedings, explains the format, and asks both parties to present their position. Clive goes first. He presents Sandra's case. The deductions are itemized. Costs are reasonable. The property was returned in a damaged condition. The checkout report supports the claims. He's smooth. He's concise. He's the solicitor who does this every week. You watch him and think, this man has done this 50 times and most of the time the tenant doesn't have a 24-page bundle. Judge Morrison turns to you. She says, please present your case. You say, I'd like to start with the video. May I? Judge Morrison says yes. You place the tablet on the table where she can see it clearly and you play the video. 9 minutes and 43 seconds of you walking through a flat on an April morning, narrating what you see, filming everything you were able to see was already wrong. Here's the thing about watching your own phone footage in a courtroom setting, it's weirdly formal. Your narration voice, which felt slightly comedic when you recorded it, sounds very different played in a beige municipal hearing room at 11 in the morning. It sounds precise. It sounds like someone who knew what they were doing. You didn't know what you were doing, you were just following Kieran's advice, but the footage doesn't convey that. What it conveys is, here are the issues, here is the date, here is the close-up. About 2 minutes in, Judge Morrison holds up one hand and says, can you pause there, please? You pause the video. On the screen is a close-up of the living room carpet. The faded patch near the door. Your hand is in frame, pointing to it. The timestamp in the corner says April 14th, 10:22 a.m. Judge Morrison says, looking at her file, the deduction claim for carpet is dated October 18th. She makes a note. She says, please continue. You continue. Every item on the deduction list appears in the video. Every single one. Judge Morrison pauses you twice more, once at the towel rail section, once at the hallway floor. Each time she makes a note. Each time she says, please continue. Clive, you notice, stopped taking notes about 4 minutes into the video. He is very still. He has the demeanor of a person who has just understood something he would rather not have understood. When the video ends, Judge Morrison looks at you and says, you filmed this on the day you moved in. You say yes. She says, before you brought in any furniture or belongings? You say yes. She says, and Kieran, she's looked at your witness statement. This was his suggestion? You say yes. She makes another note. Then she turns to Clive and says, Mr. Hartley, would you like to respond to what we've just seen? Clive's response is measured, professional, and mostly a concession. He says the checkout report identified damage at move-out and the deductions reflected that assessment. He doesn't address the video directly. There's not really a way to address the video directly. He says his client had no reason to believe the conditions had been documented at move-in. Then he adds, and this is the part you'll remember, we would be open to revisiting the deduction amounts in light of the evidence presented. Revisiting. That's the word. 9 minutes of phone footage and a solicitor is using the word revisiting. Judge Morrison asks both parties several questions before she delivers her ruling. She asks you about the cleaning certificate, you produce it, she reviews it. She asks about the plumber's assessment, you produce it. She asks about the deposit scheme late registration, which you'd almost left out of the bundle but decided to include. She says specifically, the scheme requires registration within 30 days of deposit receipt. This was registered on day 33. I'm noting that. You note that she noted it? She also asks you about the hardwood floor claim. The $950. She says, your video shows scuffing in the hallway on move-in day. The claim includes hardwood damage. Can you explain your position on this item specifically? This is the one you'd been most prepared for, because it was the only item with any complexity. You say, the video shows the existing scuffing. The claim amount of $950 is not consistent with the repair cost for scuffing of that nature. You present the two quotes you obtained, both under $350 for comparable work. Even if some scuffing occurred during the tenancy, the amount claimed is not supportable. You put the three quotes on the table. Judge Morrison reviews them, and she makes a note. Clive does not present counterquotes. He has no move-in documentation of his own. There is no checkout inspection video from Sandra's side. The checkout report is a written document, not time-stamped visual evidence. Against 9 minutes and 43 seconds of dated, narrated, close-up footage from move-in day, a written report with no independent corroboration does not carry the same weight. That's just the evidential reality. Judge Morrison delivers her ruling 11 minutes after both parties have finished. You've been sitting in the beige room with Clive, both of you looking at your respective papers for 11 fairly long minutes. She comes back in, but she sits down. She reads from her notes. Having reviewed the evidence presented, I find as follows. The move-in video submitted by the claimant demonstrates pre-existing conditions at the property consistent with all 6 items on the deduction notice. Deductions for carpet damage, wall repainting, kitchen cabinet damage, bathroom towel rail, and bedroom window blind are disallowed in full on the basis that these conditions are documented as pre-existing at the start of the tenancy. Regarding the hardwood floor claim, while some scuffing may have occurred during the tenancy, the amount claimed is not supported by market evidence, and the pre-existing condition documented in the video reduces the claimant's liability substantially. I allow $180 against the hardwood floor claim. The balance of the deposit, $3,020, shall be returned to the claimant within 14 days. The defendant shall additionally pay the claimant's court filing fee of $85. Total payable to claimant, $3,105. Sandra Whitfield's company had to return $3,500 plus the filing fee. Plus, and this one's the quiet kicker, whatever they paid Clive for the hearing. A solicitor representing a failed deposit claim in a small claims case doesn't come cheap. The thing that was supposed to be the low resistance option ended up costing significantly more than just returning the deposit. That math is entirely of Sandra's making. Sandra Whitfield charged you $2,800 for damage that her own property had before you arrived. Not exaggerated. Misremembered. Charged for, on a list. In a formal letter. While a 9-minute video file existed that documented every item, you got the $305 back 14 days after the ruling, as ordered. Bank transfer from Whitfield Lettings, no note attached, no apology, just the number appearing in your account. You screenshot it, you add it to the Whitfield folder, you close the folder, you're in a different city now, different flat, different landlord, different move-in day. You spent 37 minutes filming the walkthrough on move-in day. Kieran would be very pleased. You uploaded everything to 3 separate backup locations. You emailed yourself the file with the subject line. Address, move-in walkthrough, date. You've also, and this is maybe slightly excessive, asked your landlord to confirm in writing that the documented conditions are noted and don't constitute a tenancy breach. Your new landlord said, "Of course, sensible practice. You believe this is a good landlord. You also believe in the 37 minutes of footage. Here's the thing you want anyone who rents to hear, not because your landlord is necessarily going to do what Sandra did, most won't, but because the film takes 10 minutes and costs nothing and removes all doubt, every room, every issue, close-up, narrated, timestamped by your phone automatically. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need special equipment. You need 10 minutes and a phone and the willingness to do it before you bring a single box through the door. That's it. That's the whole thing." Kieran, for what it's worth, has been told this story approximately 4 times and has never once said, "I told you so." He just smiles in this very specific way. You let him have it. He earned it. Okay. So here's the question I want you to leave with. Not about deposits, though honestly, please film your next move-in walkthrough. Please. For your own sake. The question is this. Sandra Whitfield didn't change her approach because of this case. As far as you know, she's still running 4 properties. She's just not running them with you as a tenant anymore. The system that made this possible, the one that assumes tenants won't fight back, that system is still running. The only thing that broke it for you specifically was 10 minutes and a phone on a Saturday in April. How many people this year are going to get that same letter and not have the footage? How many people are going to do the math and decide 2,800 isn't worth the fight? That's the question that sticks with me about this story. Not the court ruling. Not the $305. The people who got the same letter and just absorbed the loss. Drop your rental horror story in the comments. Or drop, "I'm filming my move-in walkthrough this weekend, and I genuinely promise to reply to every one of those." I will. Because that's the whole point. Subscribe if this story hit differently. Thursday. New story. You're always the character. Always. And next week's is genuinely something else. A woman discovers that the person she thought was her biological father isn't. Not through a DNA test. Through a Reddit post her dad made 7 years ago. Post he deleted. Post she finds on her 31st birthday on a phone she borrowed from her cousin. That story is coming Thursday. You'll want to be here. These are the stories nobody planned to tell. Heal equipment. You need 10 minutes and a phone and the willingness to do it before you bring a single box through the door. That's it. That's the whole thing. Kieran, for what it's worth, has been told this story approximately 4 times and has never once said, "I told you so." He just smiles in this very specific way. You let him have it. He earned it. Okay, so here's the question I want you to leave with. Not about deposits, though honestly, please film your next move-in walkthrough. Please. For your own sake. The question is this. Sandra Whitfield didn't change her approach because of this case. As far as you know, she's still running 4 properties. She's just not running them with you as a tenant anymore. The system that made this possible, the one that assumes tenants won't fight back, that system is still running. The only thing that broke it for you specifically was 10 minutes and a phone on a Saturday in April. How many people this year are going to get that same letter and not have the footage? How many people are going to do the math and decide $2,800 isn't worth the fight? That's the question that sticks with me about this story. Not the court ruling, not the $305. The people who got the same letter and just absorbed the loss. Drop your rental horror story in the comments. Or drop, "I'm filming my move-in walkthrough this weekend and I genuinely promise to reply to every one of those." I will, because that's the whole point. Subscribe if this story hit differently. Thursday, new story. You're always the character. Always. And next week's is genuinely something else. A woman discovers that the person she thought was her biological father isn't, not through a DNA test. Through a Reddit post her dad made 7 years ago, a post he deleted. Post she finds on her 31st birthday on a phone she borrowed from her cousin. That story is coming Thursday. You'll want to be here. These are the stories nobody planned to tell. That's why they feel the way they do.